Prahlad, similarly. And then Nirvairaya, or Nirvaira, having no enemies. Towards others, he felt no ill will. In fact, the opposite. Towards others, he feels a friendly disposition. So therefore, Prabhupada makes reference to 3:25:21, which is a very famous verse. It's part of, those of you that remember, one of Dravida's presentations when he came at Christmas time, Sadhu Sangastaka, Sadhu Sangha Ashtaka, 8 verses from chapter 25 that are glorifying sadhu, So the context of that section is at the beginning, at the beginning, Devahuti is asking Lord Kapila Dev how to become free from inordinate attachment to family life, to the body and bodily conception and all the emotions that go with the bodily conception. How to become free from that. And his answer is devotional service. And then devotional service becomes available or possible in one's life through association of a devotee. So these verses are describing how do you tell who a devotee is? And how do you associate with a devotee? And what's the consequences, the outcomes that come from association with a devotee? That's like this sadhu sangastaka. And this verse 21 is, what are the qualities? So it's very nice. Sadhu bhushanam is how the verse ends, right in the purport. Sadhu bhushanam. Bhushanam means ornament. So like, a necklace or a ring or some decoration. Like, the deities have their very nice set of bhushanams this morning. Kishore has his little buffalo horn by his side and different ornamentations. So those are bhushanams. And the sadhu has the ornaments of good qualities. Where does he get those ornaments from? From the pujari room. From Krishna. Because Krishna decorates his devotees with good qualities. Yes? Krishna decorates his devotees. So there's very logical. It's mystical, but it's logical. It's inexplicable, but it's explicable. How it happens. So there are 26, Krishna Das Kaviraj identifies 26 qualities of a devotee, and of those 26, one is Svarup Lakshana, and the others are Tatastha Lakshana. Svarup means the main primary characteristic, the intrinsic characteristic of a devotee is Krishna Eka Sharana. They take full shelter of Krishna. And the others are marginal. They are decorations given by Krishna around that one, Krishna Eka Sharana. So these are some of the characteristics of a devotee, just like here. Nirvaira, has no enemies. So here's the verse, 3:25:21, very famous verse. Tatikshava karunika. Tatikshava. like all of you guys and ladies. Titikshava, very tolerant. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes that a tree, Turor iva sahishnuna, similar, tolerant. Titikshava. Same as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, we should tolerate dualities. Heat and cold, pleasure, pain, honor and dishonor. Not only tolerate dishonor, but tolerate honor. It's not meant for you, it's meant for Krishna. A sadhu has this characteristic, this bhushana, tolerant, karunika, karuna, karunika. Karuna means compassion or mercy. Devotee is compassionate by nature. It's just that quality of compassion, kindness unto others, having real deep concern, not superficial, real deep concern, not just for the body, but for the well-being of the eternal soul, compassion. And so devotees do something about that condition, arising from compassion. Kind of like the higher purpose of book distribution and Harinam Sankirtan, our outreach activities, these and all the other forms, distributing prasadam and so on, these are extensions of compassion. So, a kind of immature or arising from passion ideas. We're going to go save the conditioned souls. We're up there and they're down there. We're going to make them fortunate. Those poor fellows. So, not out of that kind of spirit, but care, genuine care. Why? Because Krishna cares. Even if we don't care, Krishna cares. But compassion arises naturally. It's just natural. You receive something wonderful. You want to give that something wonderful. It's just natural. Chatikshava Krunika. Surada Sarvadehinam. This is a quality of Krishna also. He's the well-wishing friend of all living entities. Yes? Bhagavad Gita 5:29. Bhoktaram yogatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suradam sarvabhutanam surada sarvadehinam. So it's not like we think, oh, I'm the well-wisher of everyone. I mean, what can we do to be the well-wisher of even ourselves, or to speak of the person next to us, or the other prabhus in the ashram, or what to speak of everybody? So it's made possible because the ornament becomes possible because of the one, which is Krishna Eka Sharana. Then, on Krishna's behalf, we become the instrument. We're not, not false ego. I'm going to be the friend of everyone. Not like that. I mean, that's a nice thought. But as those of you that have read Ishopanishad, Prabhupada, that, checks that idea very strongly. Universal brotherhood. Without God, it's common. It's a notion only, but it's a notion. That's like popular. Oh, it's a benevolent person. The real benevolence is not just we do godly things, but very, very clear. We're acting in a relationship with the personality of Godhead, Krishna Eka Sharana, on His behalf. We do. We extend what we extend on His behalf. We're instruments. That's our Bhagavad Gita teaching, and similar here. This is the qualification of Prahlad. And then Ajata Shatrava. Again, Shanta. Shanta, peaceful. Prashanta in the 7th canto verse where Vishnu is describing Prahlad. But he has no enemy. Even Hiranyakashipu, or a smaller Hiranyakashipu, little Hiranyakashipu, may do something that's not nice. I know some people that just, it's their spirit. They see something moving and they're envious. They just so, so they just lash. The internet is filled with people like that. So beware of the toxicity of that thing that so many Americans do, or people in the world do. They want to know about something, so they go on the internet. Just like many of you heard Gopal Bhatta's presentation. It's just part of our culture these days. And there's some people, the idle mind is the devil's workshop. They have nothing else to do but fill the internet with poison. And then people go and drink it. Oh, look at this. I haven't seen this one before. Out of curiosity, they drink it and they're poisoned. It happens, unfortunately. So, aside from the internet, just the principle of having proper regard, a friendly disposition towards all. And then the converse is not having enmity towards others. Prabhupada translates, inimical towards none. Having no ill will, no hard feeling, negative feeling towards anyone, regardless of their behavior. So the behavior can be quite bad. You don't necessarily have to feel good about the bad behavior, or there's something wrong with you. The behavior can be bad. And Prahlad speaks in those ways with his father. Oh, I've heard about this idea of friends and enemies, and now I see. You have that capacity. Lord Vishnu, he's the enemy, and you're on his side, so I'm against you because you're with him. This goes on. On the Hiranyakashipu level, and then a small level, someone becomes aligned with something, and then groupism starts. This group and that group, and it's animalistic. It's the nature of contaminated life. But persons who are free from contamination, they don't have that. They hold no inimical feeling or ill will towards anyone. And then, in conclusion, Prabhupada writes, while that's the case, and so the devotee, Suradam Sarva Dehinam, in Kapila Dev's language, he feels goodwill towards others and wishes their welfare, karunika, compassion, so they go and reach out to some people, speaking of himself as an acharya. And of course, some people say thank you, and some people don't say thank you, and some people say bad things, and it's just part of the territory. Part of the territory. And it's one should remain undisturbed when that happens. I mean, so his Prabhupada's language is one should be, a Vaishnava should be above criticism. That's your responsibility as a devotee, be above criticism. Knowing full well there will be criticism. And when the criticism comes, don't cry, or don't, stop being above criticism and get down and dirty with the person who's giving criticism. Don't do that. You just, rise above it, that you tolerate the duality of material existence. How is that possible? How does one become undisturbed, remain undisturbed, even with cause of disturbance? It's the first item. Full shelter in the personality of Godhead. And there isn't an option to become a transcendentalist. That's the method. By taking shelter of the spirit of serving Krishna, and He's my master, I'm His servant, and all circumstances of life that are presented are varieties of opportunities for service. Challenging, no doubt, but in this material world filled with duality, that's the teaching, that's the advice that we're given. And our Master is very kind. That the final part of this verse is Hiranyakashipu, he is going to torment Prahlad. Danishye, Druyet will commit violence. In the translation, he's going to tease, commit violence and tease. But there's a protector, there's a protector. Now, in social circumstances, if we see somebody bullying another person, I don't know how you all feel about it, but I never liked bullies. And I saw people doing that because it's really hurtful to the person who's being bullied. So there has to be some protection. And the protection doesn't mean just go and clobber the other guy, but that may be required depending upon how strong the bully is bullying. I know there was one place I traveled, I don't even remember where it was, and some young person, some remote place, an Indian girl, and I asked her, how many other Indian students are there in your school? She said, very few. I said, do you get teased? She sat up and said, our school has a policy, if somebody bullies, they're kicked out of not just out of the class, they're kicked out of school. A really strict policy. I said, wow, fantastic. So that's like, the Kshatriya give protection, but ultimately, Krishna gives protection. And our friendship amongst the devotees, as Madhyamas making friendship amongst devotees, is not get a groupism against the bully, but you just, stand by the side of the person in compassion and support, and then that individual has some strength. Still, then, that the bully or the person who is the perpetrator of some harm should be dealt with in an appropriate way. Whatever is appropriate, without the details. That's delicate sometimes. But that's our service, but ultimately, it's our acting on behalf of the Supreme Lord. If we get that we're acting on behalf of the Supreme Lord, we're no better than the bully. I mean, in a transcendental sense, we're an illusion and they're an illusion. It's not, which illusion is better? Wet stool or dry stool, which is better? So acting outside of our relationship with Krishna consciousness is not advisable. So whatever we're performing our social function responsibly, respectfully, honoring Dharma, don't forget Paradharma. We'll say it the other way. Always remember Krishna. Never forget Krishna. And carry out your duties of life as best you understand the duties of life. just as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Perform your prescribed duty and always think of me. And never forget him. Hare Krishna. Any discussion, comments on the verse? Yeah.
Hare Krishna. I have a question regarding when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that, gives that example with mad elephant that destroys everything in the garden. So I was remembering once I actually asked you this question a long time ago. If a person commits like a bad activity, most abominable activity, what's going to happen with all the sukriti he's got? And then you gave me that 9:30 verse in Bhagavad Gita saying that even if he commits the most abominable action, he's still considered to be saintly. And then also I was under the impression that whatever sukriti we get on our spiritual bank account we never lose it. But then there it says you lose all your pious activities if you do harm to a pure devotee. Would you please explain that?
Sure. Spiritual, there's different kinds of sukriti. Bhaktivinoda Thakur discusses this, and it's presented in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Bhog, Anmukhi Sukriti, Moksh, Anmukhi Sukriti, and Bhakti, Anmukhi Sukriti. So it's the Bhakti Sukriti that's not destroyed. But one commits an offense against a devotee, all of one's other sukritis are destroyed. Now, if one offends a devotee, one may forget, it may become covered, but not lost. The bhakti sukriti. Here it comes, here it comes.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the class. So yesterday we were mentioning the story of Jayadev in the Gita Govinda where the two robbers robbed him of all his wealth. And then when he was in the king's
they tried to kill him too.
He noticed that they were in the audience, and then he secretly said something to one of the guards. And,
without retelling the story, what's the point?
So my question in that regard is that, where did I write this? So the robbers, are we supposed to learn from this pastime that if the robbers didn't commit Vaishnava aparad by slandering his character, presumably the earth wouldn't have swallowed them up? Is that the ultimate lesson we're supposed to learn from this pastime?
Well, although Jayadev was forgiving, the Supreme Lord was not. And the representative of the Supreme Lord, Mother Earth, was also not pursuant to the Supreme Lord's not forgiving. And they didn't go to Jayadev, fall at his feet, and ask for forgiveness. They did the opposite. They were vilifying him, in addition to plundering and attempted murder. It was too much, although he had forgiven them. Does that answer your question? Okay. You're on.
All right. So you were mentioning that so they were the two gundas physically robbed him. So on our practical level, people may not physically rob us, but may rob our peace of mind in the form of bullying or negative words, stuff like that. So how can we distinguish, because you were mentioning that it would have been a dharma thing for him to...
Would have been a what?
It would have been the dharma thing to arrest them or lock them up, but he was very forgiving.
Right.
So in our practical situation, how are we supposed to distinguish between, to maybe say like, let's say one leader in the temple, how do they distinguish between to let something go or do the Dharma thing by chastising?
Well, there's a Brahmana, there's a Kshatriya, and there's a transcendentalist. And, in terms of Varnashram, he was a Brahmana. He was very, very tolerant. And the Kshatriya, if one is going to take the position of Kshatriya, he can't be, even that the person may be Brahminical by nature, the extending of protection must be there. Using your specific context, the temple president, if they see somebody violating another somebody, they must intervene. Now, that doesn't necessarily get out a club and beat the guy, but they have to intervene and extend protection. Appropriate protection. That's their duty. If they're not prepared to do that, let somebody else step aside, let somebody else do that. Now, there are different ways of extending protection. So that's, some people have this style and some people have that style, and that's certainly permitted. Just like some instructors and some instructors. They'll instruct this way, they have that method or approach or style. That's fine. There's diversity. But protection must be extended. Something else? Yes?
Maharaj, can you give some examples of the kinds of offenses that are common in our society, or ones that we should particularly watch out for?
Well, I mentioned one already, and that's, internet bashing. Very common, unfortunately. It's so impersonal because I'm not accountable to anybody. I can say anything, and so something that comes to mind at the moment is comparing. It's a little more subtle, but in Brihat Bhagavatamrita, familiar, the title at least? The first part is Narada Muni on a quest to identify that person who is the greatest recipient of Krishna's mercy. So it's really clever, it's brilliant, where Narada Muni, rather than Sanatana Goswami saying, this one is the best, which, relatively says the others, well, they're not the best. Yay for this one, and, well, the other ones, He doesn't do that. The persons themselves, out of their humility, they cite, I'm not so qualified. These are my faults, and these are my faults, and these are my faults, and these are my faults, my shortcomings. But if you really want to know who is the best recipient, so-and-so, and glorify so-and-so. So Narada goes charging off to that so-and-so. And he sees all the things that the previous person said is true, and he goes, you're the greatest recipient of the mercy of the Supreme Lord. And they go, no, no, no. Here's my shortcomings, and here's my defects, and this thing is wrong, but if you really want to know, I may have a particular affinity. So at the end of it, Sanatana Goswami says in one of his, because he comments on the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, they're all perfect. Within transcendental perspective, perfect, more perfect, most perfect. In so doing, perfect, more perfect, perfect, more perfect, most perfect, like we may glorify, the residents of Vrindavan, and amongst the residents of Vrindavan, the gopis are most perfect. So it's not like, cowherd boys take a hike. Or Mother Jasoda and Nanda Maharaj, you're in the penalty box because you're not most perfect. That's offensive. So while glorifying, we don't ignore or diminish the glories of others. We shouldn't do that with the demigods, like this. We shouldn't do that with. We may have a particular affinity for someone who cooks wonderfully, or leads kirtan wonderfully, or speaks wonderfully, and we may have like really strong affinity for a particular person. But it's immature and it's an offense that we compare this one with that one and kind of poo-poo that one and say this one kijai and that one poo-poo. And we may not even overtly do the poo-poo on that one. Just do like this one, this one, this one, this one, and it's indirect, but it's implied. It's implicit. If we don't have similar regard and express it, respect and appreciation for, because we're individual and we have attraction for something, and someone else is an individual and they have an attraction for something else. Someone else may like another person's specialty of cooking or kirtan singing or class giving or this thing or that thing, administration and something. We have our preferences and someone else has their preferences, and that's fine. And if we don't have that, we're going to do the groupism thing. And that's not fine. And it happens. It happens. So the antidote, or the proper position, is respect, and respect, and respect. We have our own special appreciation, and meanwhile respecting. That's one example. A major one is fault-finding propensity. The fly-like mentality that goes to the sore. Ramchandra Puri. So, those are some examples. Jitendriya.
It says in Scripture, excusing the minor offenses of others.
What's that?
The minor offenses of others.
Excuse the minor offenses.
Of others. So, like, where do you draw the line?
Well,
maybe
please,
minor to somebody,
please
but
excuse
major
me.
to somebody else. Pardon me?
Please excuse me. On the other side of me, you can do what you like. I'm just joking. That's the line. Well, a lot depends on one's capacity to elevate. where you draw the line? You know, different persons may draw the line in different places.
Everybody's acting according to the modes of nature they have acquired. I remember at the airport, well, they say to Srila Prabhupada, he says, they have no culture. First of all, they don't know what the modes of nature are. And so it talks about that in the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita, that you can always expect something adverse in Kali Yuga. I mean, it's just so filled with faults, so you have to be tolerant. So the modes of nature which they have acquired, it's just it's amazing. I mean, how you look at people. I remember Tripurari Swami. He would be bouncing off people, you know, shaking hands one and then back and forth all day. It was just totally amazing how callous he was to whatever response they gave. So that's why he was so successful, that he didn't regard any of their offenses. He just went on with his service. So, and then other book distributors followed that, and that's why it was so successful.
Yeah. Many people would be a wilted flower after the first 3 people. Yeah, so it depends on capacity. And yeah. And excusing the offense doesn't mean the behavior is now considered okay. Excusing the offense is what's behind the behavior, so it goes to the person behind the behavior. And that's a big deal, a big distinction, I mean to say, is the person, forgiveness goes to the person. That's what real forgiveness is. So like fresh start, clean slate. Tendency, if there's a bad behavior, is to do the bad behavior again. But to get the bad behavior to not happen again, it's not just forgiveness stops the next bad behavior. Devotion, being the well-wisher of the soul, bhakti being transmitted through that medium of compassion is really what makes the difference. To have somebody relieved of tendency. That's our teaching.
When somebody takes the humble position, a demoniac person will take advantage of that.
Sure. Let them take advantage anyways. Let them take advantage anyways. Because Krishna will protect the person who's the devotee who someone is trying to take advantage of.
Thank you.
Yeah, anything else? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki.